Okay, so today I wanted to make a really quick video on meltdowns as it relates to people with Asperger Syndrome. Basically, a meltdown happens when a person with Asperger Syndrome is overloaded. It can be a sensory overload, an emotional overload. I remember, I think it was a couple videos back, I likened a person with Asperger Syndrome to like a media player on a computer that was live streaming, and you know how it sometimes pauses to buffer and process that information before it can keep going. I think people with Asperger Syndrome are kind of like that too, in that if there's too much information at one time, then a lot of times Aspies will need to just step back and process the information. And if there's too much information and they don't have the space or the time to process it, then it can cause a meltdown. And these meltdowns can manifest in the form of a panic attack, or maybe outburst of anger or aggression. I know for me, I just tend to withdraw. I don't really have an aggressive personality, but I tend to just really want to withdraw and not talk to anyone and just be by myself, which I think is just kind of a natural tendency if you are overloaded and you need a break. But basically it can be caused by sensory overload. One example, I work at a TV station. I think it was a couple months ago. I was communicating with the director via like this intercom, which is basically a microphone attached to the board in front of me. And the director's voice was really soft and quiet, very hard to hear. And I had all these other sounds coming in from all the different monitors around me. Each one had sound coming out of it, plus there were a couple people behind me that were just chatting up, talking. It was really rude of them, actually, but they were just having a conversation, and I was just getting completely overwhelmed by all the different noises that were in the studio. And here I am, expected to hear this director's voice perfectly and take their orders and do the technical things that I have to do. And keep in mind, this is live programming, so if I make a mistake, it's going to be seen by potentially thousands of people. So you want to talk about a high stress situation. But yeah, definitely in that instance I was really feeling overwhelmed. Like, I was about to just yell at the people in the room to just shut up, but basically I think I was able to control myself. But that sort of thing can cause a meltdown. Another example for me is like if I'm in a car. I know I've talked about this before, but like the constant motion of the cars going back and forth and just whizzing by. If I'm a driver and there are just lots of other aggressive drivers, then sometimes that can overwhelm me. It's not as bad when I'm a passenger, but I can still feel it sometimes. But especially if I'm the driver, then it can really be stressful. But another example would be like some kind of inescapable situation, and I guess the driving in the car would also fall under that, because you can't just leave a car if you're unable to pull over. But yeah, that sort of thing can cause a panic attack, and that can happen even in people that don't have Asperger Syndrome, but it's definitely true for me. And also I think like an emotional overload, and maybe this falls under sensory, I'm not sure, but like if you're around people too long, like this is the case for me, if I'm constantly in a conversation with somebody and I really want to not be in a conversation with somebody, it can leave me exhausted afterwards, and I just need time alone to just take control of myself and process everything. Sometimes I'll hear conversations just repeating in my head, kind of like an echo. And I think that's my mind trying to just process everything, because, even something as mundane as a conversation with just somebody over nothing in particular, it can be pretty stressful for a person with Asperger syndrome. And a lot of it depends on the individual, but definitely for me, it can be tough. And I think also, like, dealing with complex emotional situations can do that, like different relationship things, talks like that. If I've gotten in a fight with somebody, I can just, all I want to do for days is just be alone in my room and just not say or do anything or interact with anyone in any kind of way, because that's definitely stressful, and it definitely gives me the need to want to process and buffer that information and take it in. But basically, if you are having a meltdown, some things that I try to do, one is to just breathe. Deep breaths always help. A friend gave me some really good advice. One thing you can do is to inhale for 4 counts, and then to exhale while humming just a tone for 8 counts. And I tried that, and it really helped, and it can kind of calm you down if you're having a panic attack. Another thing that I like to do to calm me down is just like a kind of positive visualization, like, imagery in your mind of something that calms you down, makes you peaceful and happy. I just tend to get lost in that kind of utopian imagery in my mind, but even though it's just, a fantasy, it still brings a sense of peace to me emotionally, thinking about it. So positive imagery can help. And I guess if possible, just alone time, if you're able to get out of that situation. Just, leave the room, go to the bathroom or somewhere where you can be alone, and just breathe and try to process and regain control. But it was a lot worse for me when I was a kid, having meltdowns, because I didn't have as much control back then, and I would yell and scream and just do all kinds of really embarrassing things that, when I think about it now. But like I said, I'm not really that aggressive anymore, but I tend to do the opposite now. I just want to withdraw and not talk to anybody. Like, I will shut down and not say a word. Even if somebody's trying to talk to me, I just won't say a word. It'll be like I'm just frozen stiff. But, But like I said, the best thing to do is just try to get out of that situation, try to withdraw, and try to breathe and focus on positive things and try to calm yourself down. But that's basically how I cope with them.